Hello and welcome to Needle Felting 101. Today we're going to go over some of the basic tools that you will need for needle felting, which is dry felt method. I'm going to go through some of the tools, and then we're going to go into some of the core shaping techniques. So, first of all, I don't normally needle felt on a felting pad. I use a nice towel that's rolled up. Mats are really just for protecting the needle. So if there's something or anything that's soft underneath your project that's going to protect your needles, that's really all you need. Some needle felters like to use foam mats, some like to use wool mats, some like to use sacks that are filled with rice or beans. I'm really comfortable with whatever I have at home, which is a folded up towel on a table. There's also a felting brush, which looks similar to this. Sometimes it's yellow, sometimes it's pink, sometimes it's wooden. It's just basically a bristled mat. What I use brush mats for are for flat felting. So if I need to make anything for my 3D needle felts, like a skin pelt or a wing or anything that's flat, this is the tool that I use to needle felt on that. However, I do not use this for 2D felting or wool painting. It's just too small. They really don't make brush pads much bigger than an 8x10 or whatnot. So if I do need something to needle felt into, that's when I get my foams, or I get my larger wool mats and then needle felt a wool painting or 2D flat felt art onto. So trying to clear up the confusion as far as the brush mats, flat felting for 3D felting. So I know that sounds a little confusing, but anything that I need that is flat for my 3D sculptures, this is the tool that I need. Wings, like I said before, wings, skin pelts, anything flat, I use this brush. It's wonderful. Let's go on to needles, because that is pretty important. We need specialized needles to needle felt our fibers with. Needle felt needles are different. You cannot use a traditional sewing needle. It does not have what it needs to grab onto the fibers, and that's etched. So needle felting needles are cut into the ends, almost like a barb. Those cuts that are into that metal grab onto your fibers. The more you stab, the more those fibers interact with each other, entangle, and start knotting up. So there are special needles. No, you cannot use you cannot use whatever needle you have at home. I've heard that quite a few times, so I had to just kind of explain to them, and then they understood. But a regular sewing needle or a crocheting or knitting needle, they do not work. They do not have the barbs that are cut in so that they can grab onto the fibers. They do not have that. So put those away and invest in needle felting needles. Okay, so needle felting needles are not, they're not all made the same. So when you go to a non-needle felting store, like an art supply store, they may not have professional products there. So they have very standard products, and usually their needles are classified as small, medium, large, or fine, or strong, or big. Anything that denotes needles in that way is more of an amateur type of needle. There's nothing wrong with using amateur needles, especially when you're first starting out. You will break needles. So those amateur needles at those amateur student prices are great for our pocketbooks as we're learning this art. Um, so let me go over why needles are small, medium, large. In the professional world, needles have gauges. They have a number that corresponds to um, the different steps that you need your needles for in needle felting. So if you go to a art supply store and you buy a large needle, your large needle are really just bigger on the barrel, okay? And their gauges have smaller numbers. So a large, broader needle would come in like a 36, possibly a 38 gauge. Those are your larger needles. As you get smaller, the number gauge gets bigger. So it is a little confusing. I think possibly why the art supply stores and amateur needles have small, medium, larges because it's easy, right? You need your larges, you need your medium, you need your small. It's easy peasy. The numbers are what kind of gets things a little confusing in needle felting. So your large needle, possibly 36 gauge, your large needles are used for your core shaping, getting the initial loose fibers to entangle very quickly. Then you go a step up, and that is your medium needle, otherwise known as either a 38 or a 40 gauge. Sometimes they're interchangeable. And a lot of times in your art stores, the way that you can figure out if your needle is small or large is to just put them side by side and you will see the length. The large needle is longer and your medium needle is shorter. You introduce your small needle, fine, or otherwise known as fine needle. In the professional world, these needles are either a 40 or a 42 gauge. They are your finest needles. They also happen to be your most delicate needles, but really you don't use your small, fine, or 40 to 42 needle to get the heavy duty work done. You use the small needle or your fine needle towards the end more for defining your details, adding little bits and pieces here, cleaning up some of the shapes, smoothing out your core shape. And again, if you cannot figure out because the art stores have a small, medium, and large notation on the needles, just line up your needles and you'll see that your large needle is longer than your small needle, and your medium needle is longer than your small and shorter than your large. Okay, again, in the professional gauge world, your large needles are around a 36 gauge, your medium needle is around a 38 gauge, and your small needle is around a 42 gauge. Okay, now needles also come in different shapes. So the barrel right here along the edge, it's only about an inch long on all of the needles. They are shaped differently depending on what you need them for. So your heavy duty workaholic needles are usually shaped in a triangle. So the metal at the edge is made with 3 edges. 1, 2, and 3 edge, and then that's where they cut the barbs. They cut the barbs along the edges of the needle. Your workaholics will probably be more than likely a triangular needle. However, they also come in different shapes. They come in a star, which is a 4. So it almost looks like a 4-sided star rather than a 5-sided star. And again, they are cutting those barbs along the edges of those sides. Another one is a spiral needle, and your metal is twisted, and it's pretty much I think it's triangular. It could be flat. No, it's flat. And then they twist it so it kind of goes around. This is a spiral. I'm going to twist it in the light so that you can kind of see it. And along those edges, those sharper edges, that's where they put those barbs in so that it grabs. Why so many different types of needles? There's also, gosh, a reverse needle where instead of pushing the needle, the fibers in to your core shape, you're actually pulling fibers out of your core shape. And that's really a specialty needle, more for details when you're wanting different types of textures or furs for your animal or whatnot. Each of the shapes kind of do a little different things. Your triangular and your star needles, they're kind of workaholics. They really get those fibers to impact very quickly. Your spiral, I find it smooths. It really is a wonderful needle to really get a nice smooth finish around your core shapes. These spiral needles, I haven't seen them go anywhere further than a 38-40, sometimes 42, but most of the time 40. So these spirals are very fine, and which makes perfect sense. Spiral needles are your finishing needles, again, like I said, to smooth things around. Some different manufacturers like to mark their needles so that they're easily seen. So your amateur needles are normally not going to have any kind of marking. They're going to be just a plain metal. But some of your more professional or some kits will have colors on the handle. Some here, these are, oh, whoops. I think these two. So we've got a red and a green here, and this little, so these are colored. They're dipped in paint to basically tell the user what type of needle you're getting in their kit. These are from Heidi Feathers, I believe. Heidi Feathers is a manufacturer for needle felt artists. I know that her light blue needle is going to be her 40 spiral, because I do use her spiral needles quite often. Most of the manufacturers that do mark their needles will have a little guide for you to let you know what each color what needle is each color. So it'll be easy for you. And if you're using the same manufacturer, you'll start to get to know what those needles are for. So single needles, you just hold and stab. However, sometimes we need a little bit more heavy duty stuff when we're doing large core shapes. So some other types of tools are needed to help with a large or different type of core shaping. So we have our multi-tools. Multi-tools just mean that they have more than one needle inside, where you can use this tool for heavy duty use, right? Or even to speed up your process. This is the Clover pen. It usually only has 3 needles. Okay, these two are multi-tool. Sometimes they come with 3, and sometimes they come with 8, or you can take some out and customize it however you would like. So if this 8 isn't working for you, you can place as many needles as you need for your project. So I'll put 4, let's say I'll use 4 for this particular project. And now I've got a 4 multi-needle tool, but you can do whatever you would like. This particular needle felting tool is and I like to show this one and use this one a lot actually. I found this in a little Japanese store. In the Asian communities, needle felting is very, very popular. So they sometimes come out with these really cool little hacks. And this particular needle felting tool is a two needle stabbing needle pen tool. What I like the most about it is the grip. I think the grip fits really nice in my hand when I'm stabbing and getting my needles together. So if you find a little Japanese store, I haven't seen them online at all, so I can't even tell you, but a little Japanese store, even small little mom and pop Asian novelty stores might even have this. But if not, this Clover pen is a perfect, you know, they're kind of synonymous with each other. They're kind of the same. And then these multi tools, I like to use less needles for compacting quickly. And I like to use the most needles for making skin pelts and wings, or even just smoothing the end of my project all down, because it does such a great job, especially when you use all 8 needles at the same time. So let me just show you how this works. All right, so I'll move these guys away. I'm going to bring my pad in because this is such a great tool for flat felting. I'm just going to take some wool and spread it onto my pad, and then I'm using my 8 needle tool, and I'm just stabbing right into those bristles all around, and it will start to condense. So it's not going to make anything 3D for me, which is great. I don't want that I don't want this tool to do that, but it will needle felt anything flat that I need, like a skin or an ear or a wing or anything that my project needs that is flat. Once I stab one side, I peel it off. It comes off very cleanly. I flip it over to the other side to just get a stronger flat felt in it. So this is what this 8 needle multi-tool is really, really great for. Okay. And then I can shape it, I can cut it in whatever shape I want. So it's a beautiful, look at how flat that it gets. It's really a great, so that is why I like to use my brush pad and my 8 needle multi-tool for flat felting 3D pieces. Let me go over this little guy here. These are brush carders. They are used simultaneously, so you need 2 of them. When you put some wool into these brushes, they will hand card and mix colors for you. So if I had 2 colors and I just kept going in this particular motion, eventually my fibers will mix without felting. They will just kind of intermix and give me a nice mix of colors for any of my projects. So these little hand carders, they come in a lot of different sizes. Some people even like to buy 2 dog brushes that are similar to this and use it for carding your fibers. Can use that. However, I do like to hand card, and hand carding is a very simple process of just pulling each end, not pulling close together, but just each end and layering on top. This also does the same thing as the hand carders do, or the brush carders do, with mixing and smoothing out your fibers. Let's say I wanted to really get this nice and long and even for, let's say, a doll hair or fairy hair or something to that effect. So it's nice and smooth, okay? So I do like to use my hands for small pieces of wool to card and mix color. Let's go through some of the different types of wool that we will use sometimes. So the two that I'm going to introduce to you today is this is a merino top in a natural white, and it's in a roving style. And this is a natural wool. This is a Dorset natural wool, but it's a carded bat. So carded bats are like sheets of wool. And you'll see the difference between the two wool. One looks like hair and one looks like just a super mess of knots, right? All those fibers are intertangled. They're almost in some ways pre-felted because it's very soft, kind of squishy, like almost like a cotton ball. And they come in like sheets of almost fabric, okay? They're carded because they're messed up. Not the same as a mixed color, but carded just is another name for messed up. All of the fibers are going in a lot of different directions instead of going in one direction. Your roving merino top, this type of wool is a merino. This is all going in one direction. It's how they processed the wool. So they basically had these big machines that look very similar to these hand carders that go round and circle, and they feed their raw wool in there, and it becomes very long and very hair-like in a roving. Okay, so all in one direction. And not all in one direction, all messed up in this way, that way, whatever, okay? The names, like I said, this is a Dorset, this is a merino. The names, if you ever hear wool with names attached to them, that is a type of sheep that this particular fiber came from. So if you hear Corriedale, that's from a Corriedale sheep. A merino comes from a merino sheep, and so on. Most wool will come in a natural color, a natural white, a natural almost like a yellow. Depends on the color of your sheep. Will determine your natural color of your wool. All wool goes through some sort of processing and cleaning, and then some of the wool goes into a dye bath to change its color structure. What I'm going to go through now is how to start a core shape of your wool. I'm going to show you on both types of wool how to get a core shape going. I like to use my larger needle, a 36 gauge or a large needle, or a broad needle, however it's formulated or it's set on the box or package. I do like to use the larger needles for the initial getting my fibers together. So I'm going to show you the difference of how to get a core shape with both a carded bat and a merino roving. I'll do my merino roving first. So before we start to stab into this wool, we need to give the needle something to stab into. So I'm going to roll my roving into a preliminary shape. As I'm rolling, I am trying to get it as tight as I can with a roll. The initial shape that I would like to do is a ball, so I am rolling it into a ball. If I wanted this initial shape to be a long cylinder, I would roll it in a long cylinder. If I wanted it to be flat, I would just leave it flat. If I need it to go into different shapes, let's say I'm making an ice cube, right? A nice square cube. I'm going to make it into a ball first, and then I'm going to make it into a cube. So once you have it nice and tight, see how tight? Needs to have some give or some bounce for a nice core to happen. Now I'm going to start to push my needle into the fibers, but I'm making sure that the needle's going into the middle of the core, that middle where I rolled up really tight. That's where those fibers, those loose fibers, are going to adhere into. And as I am stabbing, one, I'm keeping my eye on the needle at all times. I'm keeping my fingers away from my stab area, and that will lessen the chances of me stabbing myself. I am not stabbing in one area for too long because I do not want to flatten this out. I want to keep this nice and round. So I'm just stabbing and I'm turning to another spot I have not stabbed yet. And the more that I do this, the more that I turn it, eventually my little circle ball will appear. If I see little areas where they're really loose, I'm going to pay attention to that. And I'm going to stab to make sure that it goes right into that center core. Again, I am not stabbing in the same area for long periods of time. I'm always keeping my eye on the needle so I prevent myself from getting stabbed. I'm stabbing and turning, stabbing and turning. And the stab is more of a pushing of the fibers into the core. I'm also stabbing almost the entire length of the barrel. Only the barrel has the barbs. If I go any further up, I'm not getting any felting happening with this part of my needle because there's no barbs there. I'm only going to have the felting happen when it's barbed. So when I push in, I'm only pushing from the tip of the needle to the end of the barbs. I'm also not just stabbing a tiny, teeny tip, because that also does not get the wool felted, as well as if you really get that needle into the middle. You should feel that firmer core in the middle, that core that we wrapped up really tightly is going to help us. And the more we stab, the firmer our little ball will get. Now that my little piece of wool roving is in a circle, now I'm going to start looking for places that I have lumps and bumps. And I'm going to stab into those lumps and bumps to start smoothing my little ball round. Just stabbing, getting this nice and round, nice and firm. This could be a head for a little doll. This could be a head for the start of a bird. Non-armatured animals tend to have several shapes attached to each other. Whereas an armatured animal, which means it has a wire skeleton for an inner body, it's a little bit of a different technique, and we'll go over that too in a separate video with wire armatures. Getting us all ready for our big tutorials for 3D sculpture, animal sculptures. All right, so this feels pretty consistently firm all over. Not a lot of bumps and lumps anymore, and it's pretty round. Nice little ball for a preliminary inner core for an animal. Like I said, it could be bird head, it could be a little head for a little person. What else? A little snowman. So there's a lot of things you can do with a round core. All right, so let's do the same thing, but this time with a carded bat. So again, I want to shape this into a ball. This time I think I'm gonna do more of an oblong shape. Okay. That seemed to shape up very quickly, a lot quicker than the roving. And this time I'm gonna stab and just turn in a long motion. So I'm not gonna do the ends yet. I'm just gonna do the barrel, stab right into the barrel and turn, because I want this to be more of a, maybe a body, right? If I were to put this together with my little ball head, maybe this is the start of a little tiny body for a person. Or if I shape this a little differently, I can make this into a body of the bird and then put the circle on top of the teardrop shape for a bird. So because the carded bat has already pretty much been pre-felted, my stabbing is a lot less. So I don't have to stab as long as I stabbed with the roving. Now I'm going to stab the ends. And what I do is I just stab in and around and just turn it, getting a nice little cylinder type of body. Again, you want to use a large needle here. If I was to switch over to a small needle, it's not even grabbing the fibers. It doesn't even, it is grabbing fibers, but it's not grabbing them as aggressively as the large needle does. And you want that aggression. You want the large needle to grab those fibers rather quickly, or else you'll be there forever. And I've learned that the hard way. When I started needle felting, I was always needle felting with the smaller needle and wondering, why is this taking forever? Almost quit because this is taking forever. Not anymore. It doesn't take forever anymore. All right, now I've got that one end nice and round, and I'm going to work on the other end. Now I can keep this both ends nice and round, or I can start to shape it into more of a teardrop shape to do a little bird. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I feel like that is where this little project wants to take me. So I am in control, right? My hand is controlling the needle. So I'm telling the needle with my hand motions where I want most of that stab to happen. So instead of rounding the edge, I'm making it more pointy. So this will be the tail of the little birdie. So we have another core shape. If I had rounded this, right, it almost looks like a cigar, right, like this. Then that could be like a body for a person. But since I am pointing one of the ends, it's going to look more like a teardrop, like a little raindrop or whatnot. And I'm pretty much done, right? So now I have a little little body for a bird. To attach two shapes together, you place them on top of each other. So we've got a little bird. I can bring the head out a little bit more. You're stabbing, more like pushing, more like forcing the needle from the head into the body, all around the edge. I want to have a really good attachment, so I'm making sure that the head, the needle goes through the head and the body. Once I have the head into the body, I go from the body into the head, just to give it a little bit more attachment, a little bit more of a glue, right? Really kind of like pushing so that I get a really good connection. Okay, and then this would be a start of a little bird body, right? Very sweet. Okay, and it's pretty much on there. So there's a lot of things to do, but with non-armatured animals, you want to start with core shapes. This is your foundation to a non-armatured animal. If you were doing a four-legged animal, you would have more of a oval body, maybe even a longer neck, so maybe even a teardrop head, depending on what your animal is. And then two little cylinders, two skinny little cylinders, 4 legs, for a little core shape. Okay, this is all for today. I'm going to come back and go over some wire armatures, and then we will be all ready for our first tutorial of an animal, a nice wired, beautiful animal, a nice step-by-step. It will be for beginners, but it will also have some challenging intermediate skill set for your sculpture. I hope to see you back. Bye-bye.